Okay, hello. Welcome to the live stream for December 5th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do pretty much every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it runs for about 3 hours. So if you are new here, welcome. If you are returning here, welcome. So let's see, beautiful purpose. Oh, I love that screen name, beautiful purpose. That's amazing. Karen is here. Hooray. Deanna, Henry, Kiara. Hi, welcome, welcome. Diana, Alyssa, Free Spirit. Shania, D. Mel, Jenny. Welcome, welcome. So just totally random update on stuff in my world. Our house, we had the house fire back in May. And it's just been this series of events with trying to get it done. And we're like, I don't even know, 3 or 4 months over schedule, and which has been its own exercise in frustration. So they told us the other day that they're thinking that we'll be in by the end of December. We'll see. That would be fantastic because I am up to my eyeballs in boxes in this apartment because we've had to buy all new stuff and we didn't really want to unpack it because we kept thinking we're going to be moving soon and we're not moving. And you should see the living room. It's ridiculous how many boxes are in there. Good times. First world problems. I fully realize this, but hopefully we're nearing the end of it and we'll be able to get back in the house and get situated. Karen says, how can it only be Wednesday? It feels like it should be Friday. I know. I agree. It's busy week. Has it been a busy week for you too? Shania asks, how often is this live? We have this live stream every Wednesday night, unless there's some sort of fluke event that happens where I can't make it. But it's generally every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Angie Atkinson and I also do a live stream on Tuesdays. We alternate channels. I couldn't make it on Tuesday because I had appointments and then other stuff having to do with the house in Tuesday afternoon. But normally we alternate channels on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you might want to check out her channel. If you're also looking for live streams on a more regular basis, she does them, I don't know how often, but I want to say, I think she does them 5 days a week. So she does those during the day. Oh, yeah. Stardust Ceiling says, I am in the sea of boxes also due to moving post-divorce. I can so relate. Yes. The whole starting over is just such a time of transition. And gosh, going through everything and just getting settled in is such a big deal. One thing that I've really learned, because before I was married to a guy that was in the military, and we moved about every 18 months. We were moving on a very regular basis, or a very frequent basis. One of the things I learned was to just create some sort of oasis. And so for me, that's my bed. I just want to make sure my bed is made every day. There can be all kinds of chaos going around me, but as long as I have this little oasis of calm, I have some sort of a kind of grounding point. So let's see. Alyssa, okay, let me go up and see here. She says, I didn't see any signs. Do they physically hurt you? As far we're talking about abusers. Do they physically hurt you? Well, she says, mine physically, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Mine physically let my break my spine. She was a personal trainer for 24 years. Did he break your spine or did something else happen? I just want to make sure I'm understanding you clearly here. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and just kind of give a general answer to your question, and then you're in a wheelchair. Are you in a wheelchair due to him? It sounds like you are. Yes. Okay. Okay. Uh, yes. Abusers of all kinds, whether they're a narcissist or a sociopath or you name it, if they're abusive, they can definitely escalate and they can escalate quickly. Sometimes, more often than not, there are some early warning signs. It's whether or not we see them as the major red flags that they are at the time. And this is one of those things where normal, decent people, we tend to kind of gloss over a lot of the early warning signs. They don't handle criticism well. They don't like being questioned or challenged or disagreed with. They might start becoming verbally abusive. They might give silent treatment. They might become emotionally abusive. They might start threatening to leave you or these kinds of things. And we might chalk it up to, oh, they had a bad childhood. They're under a lot of stress. They don't really mean it, especially if they're periodically apologizing. So it can, the thing with abuse is it's hard to sometimes see a pattern that is their behavior. And it's hard to see that there's like this progressive pattern, that things tend to get worse over time. More, like I said, more often than not, there is this pattern. All physical abuse tends to start with emotional or verbal abuse or psychological. Like there's some sort of earlier stage of abuse. It's very rare that they just escalate to becoming extremely violent out of the clear blue. Alyssa said she was married for 15 years and saw no signs. Hindsight being what it is, did you see signs? How did he handle when he didn't get his way, or when you didn't agree with him, or when you had a disagreement? If it did come on completely out of the blue, was there drug use involved? Was there alcohol? Was there some sort of kind of fuel that kind of escalated his behavior? She says no fighting. He ignored you. Okay, so did the ignoring start whenever you would question him or disagree with him, that kind of thing? His mom was an alcoholic. I mean, sometimes these things can escalate. You look at the Shannon Watts case, right? The gal in Denver, and her, pregnant young woman and her two children were brutally murdered by their husband. And by all accounts, she was madly in love with her husband. He seemed like a very attentive and doting father and husband. And she didn't have any real warning signs other than the fact, I think she knew he was having an affair, but other than that, there really weren't any. Actually, I take that back. There were some signs, but nothing that probably a normal person would gloss over. So some of the signs for her, he had sent her a text about, I don't know, a few days or so before he murdered her, with a Barbie doll, laying on like the couch with a blanket, like a Kleenex, I think, over her, looking like the doll was dead. And she'd posted that on Facebook and said, I don't know what to make of this. So sometimes there's these, again, this is stuff that can be easy to kind of shrug off of, like, ooh, this is kind of a dark sense of humor. This is kind of strange. And then hindsight, we can see, wow, okay, this person was actually warning me about their behavior, or that they, kind of the verbal or emotional or psychological abuse, we just kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt or just minimized it. So I am so sorry that this happened to you and that he escalated so quickly. That had to have been absolutely terrifying. And I really hope that you are able to find some peace in your life and that you've been able to rebuild. She says, yes, he put me down. Yeah. And this is, and I don't, but please don't get me wrong here. I by no means want to victim blame. This stuff, normal, decent people would never connect in a million years. It's one of these things you have to, unfortunately, you almost have to live it to understand, because, and to see the pattern of the behavior and to see this early problematic stuff for the severity that it is. So, hindsight can always be 20/20, but how long ago did this happen? Did you say? You were married for 15 years. But then when did he attack you? Karen had asked, did the fighting start when you started to stand up for yourself? And Alyssa had said yes. This can be what's so tricky, is if to other normal, decent people, this can just look like quote unquote normal relationship issues of, oh, you just need to work on communication. Oh, couples counseling, this kind of thing. But these early signs, I just can't stress this stuff enough. It's really important that we take these early signs as serious as they are, because you're dealing with a person that has this power over mentality. And there is no, working as a team with a person who has that power over mentality. And they can be, because they feel so entitled, they are emotionally immature. They don't handle their stress or frustration well. They think that other people, especially those in their inner circle, generally their significant other, should act a certain way, that they should never be questioned. They should never be disagreed with. And that you should always act a certain way. And so if you don't act that way, they rage. And that rage can, as you've experienced, go from 0 to 100 really fast. Jennifer says, I've seen like 4 or 5 different stories about domestic abuse in some Facebook groups I'm in, and trolls keep telling them that it's their fault for not seeing this ahead of time. But I keep saying that if the victims don't know manipulation when it hits them, how can it be their fault? And then my therapist today told me that it is up to the victims to see signs. It's up to the victims to stand up to the abusers, but I keep getting different answers from people. It's also confusing, so I don't get why people can make this just so black and white. So here's the thing. Nobody thinks that they would ever get caught up in an abusive relationship, just like nobody thinks they'd get caught up in a cult or with a drug addiction or in any number of problematic things. And yet it happens every single day. So we all tend to think that we can spot problematic behavior in ourselves or in other people. And the vast majority of the time we are wrong, especially when it comes to spotting problematic behavior in other people, because we tend to think, most people kind of go through life thinking that other people are like them, that we have kind of similar morals and values, likes and dislikes, wants and needs, and that we all kind of just want to get along. And that if there's conflict, then the solution to that is just improved communication. However, this is not true. There are people out there that completely lack a conscience, and they really have no moral compass. They don't care, and they don't really want to kind of just live happily ever after. A lot of people they go about creating conflict. They go in chaos wherever they go. It's their way of feeling smug and superior and getting their ego fed. They're just incapable of having a sincere, authentic relationship with other people. They're just very domination driven, and that kind of stuff is not workable. However, so because people have a hard time spotting it, but we all think we could. That's the challenge, right? Especially people that haven't been in this. They think, well, it's your fault for staying, right? If it was so bad, why didn't you just leave? And one of the many reasons people stay is so much of this stuff, especially this early on stuff about, oh, I didn't want to, I disagreed with them, or something happened. It's easy. It's not only easy for us to minimize, it's also easy for other people to minimize and to excuse, because we all want to look for reasons for why somebody's acting so erratically. And so abuse, by and large, is not identified by targets of abuse, but it's also not identified the vast majority of time by society as a whole. So that's its own level of frustration and crazy making. It's sort of like when a person's in a cult, they don't realize they're in a cult. They keep justifying what they're experiencing, thinking that they're making a big deal out of nothing, until things become so severe that they're like, you know what? I got to get out of here. I can't handle this anymore. And they finally leave. And then all these other people are like, oh, I can't believe you stayed. What's wrong with you? You were obviously in a cult, this, that, and the other. But when you're wrapped up in it, it doesn't register as a problem. But because that person's already been in one cult, the odds of them, if they're able to see the problematic behavior of like what a cult actually is, and how, if they're able to look, kind of become introspective and look at the situation from a place of curiosity and not judgment and not defensiveness, if they can really look at the experience, how did I get tangled up in a cult? If they can look at this from a place of curiosity, the odds of them getting tangled up in another cult is very, very small, because they're able to look at their experience with that place from that place of curiosity, and squeeze out as many lessons as possible. Maybe they were lonely. Maybe all of their friends had joined. Maybe, there's always some sort of hook. Like there was some sort of appeal about the cult, and abusive relationships are the exact same way. Other people thought this person was really likable. You had a lot in common with this person. There were good times and there were bad times. It wasn't 100% abusive 100% of the time. There was reasons why people stay. So, but when you're, so to say to somebody, here's the thing, is a lot of people it doesn't register when they're being mistreated. And like I said, it almost takes going through a really horrible situation like this to learn to tune in to yourself to the point where you understand what it feels like when you're being mistreated. Because if you're not grounded in your perception of reality, it's really easy to get knocked off base, oftentimes by a lot of that well-intended bad advice, where other people, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing, and commitment is everything, and you need to forgive and forget. And, especially if it's the abuser is a parent, oh, their family, how you just gotta, it's your mother, you've got to make peace with her, blah, blah, blah. So there's all kinds of well-intended but bad advice coming from other people that push a person into staying. And then there's all of this self-doubt. Maybe it is me. Maybe I am making a big deal out of things. And we get so separated from our own like internal compass of what's nourishing and what's toxic from us, because we've probably never thought about things that way. We were just kind of going through life and, didn't really think about it a whole lot. And so, but when you're on the other side of it, and that's one of the most important, I think, lessons that we can all squeeze out of this, is really getting in tune with yourself enough to know when a situation is not okay with you, that when you're being mistreated, and when you're being mistreated, to either, depending on what you feel is the safest thing to do, either be assertive about it. Hey, this is not okay with me. I don't like being talked to like that. I'm not okay with silent treatment, or distancing yourself, or going complete no contact with the person, depending on the severity of, my kind of rule of thumb is, if you're being treated with disdain, contempt, or hostility, it's time to go. So, like, and even then, even if it's more kind of mild, quote unquote, mild stuff, where you're like, well, maybe this is just how they dealt with communication in their house. They just gave silent treatment. They, did whatever. They slammed doors, they did this kind of stuff. That stuff's worth addressing. And it's also worth slowing things way down and realizing this is a huge problem. I don't want to live my life like this. So letting them know, hey, I understand that you're upset right now, and that's okay. But and it's okay if you need a few days to just, gather yourself so you don't say something that you're going to regret. I appreciate you doing that. But can you just let me know when you plan on reopening communication? Like, could we talk, Sunday afternoon or whatever? And then if it continues to happen, so you're setting this boundary, you're being assertive, you're giving them their space. It's a completely reasonable request to just say, I just want to know when you plan, when do you think you can reopen communication? And I think a reasonable time frame is within the next 72 hours. So if they can't even give you that, this is a huge red flag. Like, you're not dealing with a person who handles frustration or stress well. And more often than not, that silent treatment stuff, especially if it's in response to them being disagreed with, them not getting their way, I would strongly consider that to be a deal breaker, because you're just not dealing with a person who has a skill set to where they're mature enough to have an adult relationship. So, okay. So Jennifer, back to what you were saying. It is up to victims to stand up to the abusers. The challenge with that is it's seeing it early on for what it is, because the longer a person's in this situation, that becomes their new normal. And especially if they're being blamed by the abuser, well, I wouldn't have had to yell at you if you hadn't forgotten to buy milk at the store, right? They always have some sort of justification for their mistreatment of their target. And it's not okay for them to ever behave like that. Like, a person can get upset, they can get frustrated, but it's not okay to become intimidating or threatening or violent or yelling or cussing or putting somebody down. Like, none of that stuff's okay. This is, and again, this skill set of mature conflict resolution, most people have this stuff mastered by about second grade. So this isn't like, society expects people to behave appropriately. Like, it's not okay to spit on someone. It's not okay to hit them or to kick or to call names or to pull their hair or do any of that kind of stuff that small children do when they get upset. Like, that's not okay. And if you find yourself, just kind of maybe a little bit off topic, if you find yourself in a situation where you're noticing negative personality changes within you, where you're like, man, I didn't even know I had this side to myself. I'm the one who's starting to yell and to scream and to just start swearing. And I'm starting to shove this other person. I'm becoming abusive. This is a sign that you really need to go. Because if a relationship should be nourishing, it shouldn't be something that brings out the worst in you. And abusive relationships can escalate very, very quickly. And the target can very quickly, they take it, then they lash out, and then things escalate even more. So, okay. So I guess back to what you're saying, Jennifer, about victims needing to see this kind of behavior. This stuff is not taught. If it is taught, I guarantee you it's not being taught effectively or appropriately or even accurately, frankly. And this is, I used to work at a domestic violence shelter. I used to teach classes on this stuff. And I will tell you, it's grossly inadequate to prepare a person for what an abusive relationship really is. Again, it's like a cult. People think that cults, everybody wears, purple robes, and they all shave their heads, and they all think that they're going to hop on a UFO. But not all cults are like that, right? There's like all kinds of different cults out there. Sometimes you can wear your regular clothes. Sometimes there's no belief in a UFO. Sometimes everybody has long hair. So it's really difficult for people in general to link up what a problem is early on until we talked about this before, like the need for concrete proof. So many people, I think it's our brain's way of making sense of our environment. So our brain only links up if something's a problem once it becomes a problem. And very difficult. It can feel like we're being rude or hypervigilant or um, making a big deal out of nothing if we leave a situation early on. And again, there's a lot of outside pressure from other people that'll tell you, oh, this is, you're making a big deal out of nothing. Nobody's perfect. Forgive and forget. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. And um, other people, like, you have to get comfortable enough to know what's right for you, even if you're in a room full of people that disagree with you. And that's a skill set that also is not taught, and it really needs to be. So I'm of the mindset it is never a victim's fault for being abused. It can happen to anybody, even though people think that it can't happen to them. And sometimes there isn't a slow and steady kind of grooming process. Sometimes it does happen really quickly where things just get out of control really fast. There was a gal who did a TED Talk a few years ago about, she was young, she was 17 or 18, she wanted to be a model. She went to France, and there was, I think, two men on the train that were really schmoozing her, and they were saying, oh, you should be a model and we can help you, and all of this. They were just telling her everything she wanted to hear, and she was just really naive and took them at a normal, decent person, took them at face value. And long story short, they ended up kidnapping her and doing all kinds of terrible things, and she was able to get away. But if we all could live our life with the benefit of hindsight, it would be great. But she did the best she could in that moment, thinking like, well, these guys seem very nice, friendly people. They say that they're an agent, and um, most people think that the problematic people of the world look like Charles Manson, or they look like a problem, and that's not always the case. Some of the most dangerous people out there are incredibly charming. They're attractive. They're the Bill Cosbys or the Chris Wattses of the world. Yes, absolutely. Alcuda Babe says, when people tell you what you want to hear, we can be manipulated. Yes. And Jolene says, I don't think every victim sits and is meek and never yells or gets angry. Yes, I agree. The targets that do speak up, I think they tend to learn pretty early on that if and when they do speak up, the abuse escalates. And so then that causes them to learn very quickly of, wow, okay, don't bring up that topic again. But then that's when walking on eggshells start, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. So, you bring up, I don't know, you have a disagreement over politics, you have a disagreement over what kind of movies you like, or what color to paint the house, these kinds of things. And every time you disagree with them, they freak out. So you just learn, okay, I just need to either if I'm not going to leave this relationship, then I'm basically going to have to get in line with their thoughts and opinions. Because if I don't, then they're going to lash out at me. So this stuff is so slow and insidious. It's just awful. And it's really difficult to tell when you're in it. Cynthia says, I want to be a teacher of psychology and help teach people about the kinds of things you talk about, Dana, boundaries and how we have a right to them. I think I support that 110%. I think that would be fantastic. And I don't know what kind of degree you already have, but I would think that people could start holding classes about this stuff now. I think we all have a ton of life experience, and that counts for a lot. So just some food for thought. Okay, let's see here. XOK says, all I know is I get exhausted around narcissists who just talk nonstop about themselves and literally don't ask anyone else any questions. Yes, that is exhausting. And I agree with you. There was, when I used to work at a nursing home, this was years ago, there was this really cute, I hate saying words like that because it sounds so condescending, but enjoyable, we'll put it that way. He was a very enjoyable older man. I think he was like 102 years old, really active, but he was profoundly lonely, and he would talk. You couldn't get away from him. It was just, oh my goodness. But yes, regardless of who that stream of, conversation is coming from, it can just be a lot. And I don't know if some people even realize that they're doing that. Let's see, Wonder Woman says, what advice do you have to give parents on what to do to raise kids who won't fall for a narcissist? I think the number one thing is being grounded within your perceptions of reality, and knowing what's nourishing for you and knowing what's toxic for you, and realizing that you have a right to your thoughts and your feelings and your opinions and your wants and your needs. Like, this is kind of what makes a person an individual. And it's very, thank you. I don't know how to say your name. Tucheski, for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Parents unintentionally, I think more often than not, tend to really do a lot of things that separate their children from their sense of self. So for example, if a child falls down and scrapes their knee, what do we often tell kids, right? We pick them up and we'll say, oh, you're fine, you're fine. You're going to be okay, you're fine. Or I'm going to kiss it and make it better, right? And the reality is they're not fine. They're hurt. They're in pain. And they also, not only are they in pain, but they don't have a very big context, or they don't have a more fleshed out understanding of pain. So if they've only really hurt themselves a handful of times in their life, what's just a scraped knee for us is a big deal for them. So to tell them that they're fine, it's, like that they're not in pain, basically, or that a kiss from us will solve the pain or stop the pain, that's not accurate. And so even though that seems so benign, those little things like that causes that cognitive dissonance where kids start questioning their reality. Well, mom or dad says it's fine, but I don't feel fine. So now I'm confused. And then they might accept our reality as truth instead of learning that, yes, these are the signals that you're in pain. It's okay that you're in pain. You fell down, you really banged up your knee. I don't blame you. I'd be in pain too, right? Validating them, telling children basically what they like or what they don't like. Let's say they haven't liked spaghetti. They're 6 years old. They've never liked spaghetti. And then one day they decide that they really want spaghetti. And you've been through this before. You're like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on ordering spaghetti when you're not going to eat it, right? And so then you're trying to push them into the direction of, how about a grilled cheese sandwich? You love grilled cheese. You eat that, no problem. Grilled cheese. And your child is, no, spaghetti. And then you're in this fight. You're like, no, you don't like spaghetti, right? You like grilled cheese. Well, things like that. So either then they don't try spaghetti, or they just tell themselves, I just don't like spaghetti. Little things like that. I hope these examples are landing the way that I mean them to. So it's these more kind of minor ways that can cause harm down the road. So really helping a child to get in tune with themselves. How does it feel? Like, what are boundaries? I guess you could kind of approach it in that way. What are boundaries? What are boundaries are ways that we keep ourselves safe, like physically or emotionally. And these are some different options that we have. So if somebody is being mean to us, what could you do in this situation? And then maybe you can start kind of listing out some alternatives, and this is what I would do. I would walk them through it. So like you could stay there and feel really uncomfortable. You could, talk to another adult and let them know how you're being treated. You could, this is going to be age appropriate, right? So, I mean, it just depends on the situation. Giving them choices so you can start role modeling how to handle these kinds of situations. Or, what the whole stranger danger thing. What happens when a stranger approaches you, saying that they have a puppy in their car, and do you want to come pet the puppy? But even then, like that kind of stuff, that's teaching tactics. And I think it's more important to teach how this kind of stuff feels, because what if the person that approaches them isn't a stranger with a puppy, or isn't a man with a puppy? What if the stranger is a family friend who's a woman, or a trusted coach at their school? It's turning inward and realizing, ooh, you know what? This person said something or acted in a certain way that doesn't sit right with me. And that's all you need to know. You don't need to have that concrete proof of figuring out, is this indeed, in fact, a problem? All you need to know, it's the truth with a lowercase t. Is this a problem for me? Is this registering as something is off? Is this making me uncomfortable? So that's all the information you need. If it's making you uncomfortable, then you can either address it. You can start getting some physical and emotional distance from that person. You can do something different. It's not rude. It's not, being hyper vigilant. It's not being overly sensitive. It's none of those things. It's you being self-protective, and everybody has the right to do that. So I think teaching boundaries, is such a big thing. Really paying attention to knowing when you're being mistreated, and to know, like, just to know what is painful for you, painful emotionally, painful verbally, painful in any, physically. How do these different feelings register? What is painful for you? What is enjoyable? Like, what brings you a sense of joy? Because I'll tell you, if a person gets separated from themselves, young enough, this stuff continues. Then they're lost at sea in life in general. They're without a rudder. They don't really know what they like and what they don't like. They don't know what to do for a career. They don't know how to they can't tell the difference between a healthy relationship and an abusive relationship. They can't tell the difference between emotionally safe people and emotionally dangerous people. It's important that we be able to discern all of this, and to really, as adults, because so many of us have learned these skills much later in life. If you're not there yet, where you're like, well, you know what? I don't trust my judgment. I went through a lot of gaslighting and a lot of psychological abuse, and continually being blamed and told it was my fault. And I don't know how to trust people. I don't trust my judgment. If you're at that place, it's really a good time to just bench yourself, not making any major life decisions, definitely not dating, and learning. You've got to learn the skill set. You've got to learn to the good news is, it's about getting reconnected with your inner self. And that inner self is always there, and it never goes away. And much of what I'm talking about, the skill set with learning to be self-protective, like self-love, self-respect, self-care, self-protection, this stuff is really inherent in all of us as human beings. It starts with these kind of core instincts that we all have. So the good news is, you don't really have to necessarily develop all new skills. It's more about peeling back the layers of dysfunction that's been heaped onto us from either parents, or possibly religion, or other people in different social circles, or music, or media, all kinds of ways that we can pick up all kinds of faulty programming. So that's a long long-winded answer. So I'm sorry. I hope that made sense. And okay, so then also too, with these skills, as you're learning to get back in tune with yourself, it really does help to practice these skills, because it's not learning them. It's not an event. It's a process. Like there is no one day where you just wake up and you have it all figured out. It's a process, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of continual introspection, and you're realizing, man, I this is what I did, but I really wish I did this instead. And it happens in both big ways and small ways. Here's an example real quick, and then I'll get back to what I was saying. I had an instance the other day with the contractor for the house. Like I said, we are, I don't know, 3.5 months like over schedule. And there was an issue with the countertop, and they had sent they'd sent the schematic for the countertop and it wasn't correct. And so I was dealing with the countertop people. We're trying to get it ironed out. And the contractor kind of snapped at me or snipped at me. I mean, it wasn't major, but I was still, anyway, so he tells me, well, for every day that we don't have this figured out, it's just going to be a delay with you guys moving in. Like he was totally blaming me for his delay, his 3.5 month delay on us getting back in the house. And so let me just slow this down so I can walk you through my process. Okay. His comment, initially, it caught me off guard. I was like, what? It was like are you kidding me? Kind of a thing. So these are the signs. So I'm telling you this so you can start identifying this stuff within yourself, because this is what it looks like in slow motion. Somebody says something that's not okay with you. And the reason I like this example is because it's so minor that it just flies under the radar for most of us, okay? Somebody says something to you, it doesn't sit right. And so then we're feeling like confused. Why would they say this? Or is this a big deal? Or am I making too big of a deal out of things? How do I handle this? And we all have this default way. This is part of kind of breaking this programming. My response to stress is I either freeze, or I kind of the whole friend. I become very accommodating, and I became very accommodating and was very apologetic. Seriously, I got the schematic. The issue was resolved within an hour. It wasn't like I had these plans and was sitting on them for even a day. It was an hour and we got it ironed out. So I did not handle that situation like how I would have wanted to. I became very accommodating, very apologetic. I was like, I'm on this right now. The countertop gal and I are working it out, and like, I appreciate all the hard work you've done on the house, blah, blah, blah. And I got off the phone and I was horrified by how I handled that. And I was just so irritated with myself, because I'm like, that's not how I'd want to handle that situation. How I would have liked to handle it is to have said something like, well, the countertop people, this is not correct. This was not what we discussed. I'm getting it resolved as we speak. And the reality is we're 3.5 months over already. This has nothing to do with the countertop. So I don't appreciate you trying to pin the delay on me, is really what I would have liked to have said. So this is what I talk about when it's these continual moments of introspection, when you'll find that sometimes you handle situations in a way that you're like, yes, I'm so proud of myself. I was so assertive. I just really handled that well. Then there's going to be other times you're like, man, I dropped the ball. Like, that is not how I would like to handle it. So it's this continual reevaluation, and then you start adjusting your approach from then on. And it helps to start learning and practicing these skills in situations like that really don't matter. I'm not emotionally invested in the contractor. They seem to be on mañana time anyhow. That was what we used to call it in New Mexico. It was everything. There was no urgency for anything. I should call it just contractor time, because it's always 3 times longer than whatever they say. But, situations like that where it's no big deal. So if a person, if you're doubting your perceptions of reality, if you're doubting your truth, it can really help. Meetup.com is full of groups. I encourage people to join a handful of them. This is a great place where you can start practicing these skills. You're meeting new people. It's much easier to start being assertive and practicing with boundaries around total strangers than it is people that you've known for a long time. That's some more advanced skills, and that can be really difficult to do. So practicing around people you have no emotional investment in, you can get up and leave anytime. It's about as safe as a situation as you can get. Eileen says, Dana, you just described what I went through with my project member. I folded like a deck of cards, and I feel so ashamed that I let them treat me that way. Yeah, I hear you. It's a terrible feeling. And it's exactly that. It's feeling just ashamed and embarrassed and almost just disgusted with yourself of, this is just not okay. And when I talk about becoming introspective and like looking at our own behavior and coming from a place of curiosity and not judgment, I really mean that, because it can, seeing where we weren't assertive, and this is like low stakes kind of stuff, right? On much higher stakes, when we start to become aware of, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I was with this person who treated me like garbage. There's so much shame and embarrassment and there can be a lot of self-disgust and just horror at what we stayed in. And the thing is, if we knew better, we would do better, right? And because it's a process, we're working towards doing better. And there's going to be times that we're going to do better. And then there's times where we're still in that learning phase. That's with any skill. Boundaries are definitely no exception to that. But the good thing, Eileen, is that you recognized it. I honestly feel like a lot of these kind of small situations, these are some of the hardest situations to see. And these are also some of the most important situations to see, because when we're around problematic people, this is how this stuff tends to start. It's really, really minor, and it's easy to gloss over. It's easy to excuse. It's easy to minimize. But then this stuff grows over time, and it's much easier to exit a problematic situation earlier than it is later. So it's really important that we start tuning into ourselves to figure out, to know when we're being mistreated, so we can address it sooner than later and figure out, take some sort of appropriate action. This is also why I talk about when we're starting to date again, it's really important that you set the pace. Don't let the other person set the pace. If they're wanting to move really fast, there was a question today in the support group, but I thought that it's a question that we get asked often. And it was something along the lines of, oh, this guy is in hot pursuit of me. Is this a red flag, or is he just really interested in me? And the concern I have with a question like that is, there's a couple concerns. Is one, it's looking outside of ourselves for validation. So, and because the rest of us are lacking context, we can't say as to whether or not that's a problem. So that's a problem in and of itself, that she's not aware of, is this a problem? Like, we need to be able to tell if something's a problem or not. The second concern I had with that is that we have to set the pace. If we're letting somebody else dictate the pace, that's a problem. And healthy people always set the pace. So this isn't like, oh, we're survivors of abuse, this is why we're hypervigilant and we're guarded, and this is why we set the pace. No, this is what healthy people do. So if you've got a person, whoever it might be, but we'll just go with that example. You've got a person that's interested in dating you. They're coming on strong. They're calling you multiple times a day. They're wanting to spend every waking hour with you. It's good morning calls, it's good evening calls, or good night calls. It's all of that. And it's too much for you. If it's uncomfortable for you, that's all that matters. So then you can address it and say, hey, you know what? I really enjoy speaking with you. I'm so excited that I've met you too. But, I'll talk to you tomorrow, or you quit responding, because it's then it sets the pace. It sets the expectation of whenever this person calls you or texts you, you're going to answer, you're going to reply back. So kind of giving it some breathing room and breaking that pattern. If this person texts me, I might wait a few hours before I text them back. If it's, a person that's interested, like that, you know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing. If they're wanting to see you, for 12 hours on a Saturday and you're not okay with that, you can always counter that and say, hey, you know what? How about we go out for coffee instead? Or how about we go out for a movie or something instead? It's you setting the pace. This is what's comfortable for me. I'm going to assert what's comfortable for me. And then you'll know. A lot of people get hung up on, well, what if I start being assertive and I scare away a good guy or a good person, right? And the reality is, if they're truly interested in you, then you're not going to scare them off. They're going to be fine with you slowing things down. If somebody, or they're either going to be okay with it. Most normal, decent people are. I've yet to meet. There's no healthy person in my life that there isn't that mutuality. There's that respect for boundaries. We all have, honest, sincere communication with each other, and it's never been an issue. So it's the people, when you set a boundary and you're like, hey, how about we do this instead? Or, you know what, I'm really not comfortable meeting you for a first date at the park at night, or having you come to my house, or, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Pay attention to how people respond to you setting a boundary. That tells volumes, that speaks volumes. So if you're setting a boundary, they're not okay with it, that's a big red flag. If they continue to push that boundary, or if they give you silent treatment, or they start raging at you after setting a boundary, that's a deal breaker, especially early on. That stuff's outrageous. It's not okay. So, no, setting the pace. Okay, let's see. Jennifer says, my therapist says I need to become more assertive and more decisive because my indecisiveness is what makes me childlike and attractive to abusive people. It definitely can. The whole kind of going with the flow and this is something that I really have to work on, and I've come a long way, but I think it's a skill that a lot of us have to work on. So, and it can fly under the radar again of most people, because it's sort of like, well, I'm just really go with the flow. Like, maybe I don't have strong opinions about a whole lot of things, and I don't mind other people taking the lead. And that's okay to a point, but again, we need to be able, it takes some time, I think, to get in tune with what do you really think? Like, what is your opinion about this? And what do you think about certain things? It's weird how out of alignment we can really be with stuff like that. So that's a good first step when really getting in tune with yourself, is just starting to be honest with yourself. If you had a magic wand and nobody were to get mad at you or upset with you about your answer, what would you say? Like, what does Jennifer really think about that? If somebody offers you the choice of chicken noodle soup and tomato soup, and you're like, well, I don't know, I'm fine, well, I'll have whatever you have. Like, that could really be how you feel. But I would encourage you to start digging a little bit deeper and to start asserting yourself. You know what? Tomato. Like, I prefer tomato. And again, this stuff might seem like not that big of a deal. It's such minor stuff, but it's the minor stuff that's the easiest to start addressing. So making more decisions, and that can be exhausting at first, especially when you're not used to doing it. But if you start practicing that, in 6 weeks from now, you're going to be at a very different place, and you'll be shocked as to where you were before, and be like, oh my goodness, I just didn't have opinions about anything. And I really did. I just didn't feel comfortable expressing them. So I agree with your therapist. I think that's becoming decisive, becoming assertive, especially, is a big, big thing, because if you've got a controlling, kind of domineering personality, especially if they are abusive, they do tend to seek out more passive personalities. And the trouble that we can find ourselves in is we might be more drawn to that kind of, it can come across as confidence, but it might be arrogance or dominance. We might be more drawn to that, at least at first, until it becomes really problematic and we realize we have no control over our lives. We're being completely controlled by this other person. And, but yeah, learning to get in tune with your thoughts and your feelings and your wants and your needs is a huge first step. Chris says, I feel energized around healthy people. Yes. That's good that you can realize how you feel. It's so important that we tune into these things. We're continually getting feedback from our environment with kind of pleasant emotions and unpleasant emotions. And if we're used to numbing that out, it can be difficult to tell what it is, to identify that this emotion is tied to this event. But once you make that connection, it's a game changer. Whereas before we're like, man, I don't know why. I just feel so exhausted and drained and agitated and irritated and guarded and distrusting and anxious and unhinged and suspicious and insecure around this person. And it's like, okay, well, how do you feel around, there's a term in the book Psychopath Free where he talks about the concept of a constant. If you have this person that you basically feel a constant way around, that you feel grounded, you feel nourished, you feel like they're emotionally safe, that you can open up to them about your thoughts and your feelings and your hopes and your dreams, and they treat you with respect, they have your best interest in mind, that you can go to them with some really delicate stuff in your life, and you can trust that they're going to handle it with kid gloves, like we would do for them, right? That's kind of that mutuality, that nourishing dynamic when you're around a solid, good person. So getting in tune with, what does it feel like when a situation is safe for me? What does it feel like when a situation's unsafe? All of those uncomfortable emotions that I was just talking about, I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel suspicious, I feel guarded, I feel paranoid, I feel uncomfortable, I feel on edge, I just feel really angry and I don't know why. It's important to start pulling back, to start distancing yourself, either emotionally or physically or both, because these are not normal. These feelings are generally only go with problematic people. We don't feel that way around solid, good people we don't feel that way around solid, good people that we know, that have earned trust. So we might meet a new person that right away, they seem amazing. They seem like they seem like a really healthy, good, solid person for us. And we might have all of these uncomfortable emotions. And that can be very disjointing. Like, why do they seem like this amazing person, but I feel very unhinged around them. It's important that we honor those feelings, because odds are there's a deeper part of you that's picking up on some stuff. So knowing a person is emotionally safe takes time. It takes getting to know them. It involves kind of gradually, as it's appropriate, opening up about yourself and your life, and seeing how they handle what you're telling them. If they're not handling it appropriately, then they're not an emotionally safe person, and it's time to start backing up. So learning to just understand your environment in a different way and navigating it in a different way is just a game changer. Yes, Jessica says, when I feel anxious and on edge around a person, it's usually due to a narcissist around me. When I'm with good people, I feel inspired, motivated, and like I can just be myself with no judgment. Yes, it is. You feel relaxed. You feel a sense of calm, and you might not even realize that you are feeling this way, because it's sort of like when if you have no health issues, you don't realize what it feels like to feel healthy, but you realize it when you get sick. You realize everything that is now a huge problem, like the hacking cough or the low energy or the fever. All of that stuff is the forefront of your mind. But then when we get healthy again, you just don't even think about it. You totally take it for granted because it's not an issue. It's the same thing with healthy people. When you're around them, if you kind of stop to reflect on it, this is how you feel. But at the time, especially if you've only had a few problematic people in your life, when you're around healthy people, you tend to just not feel anything. It's just comfortable or enjoyable. But when you're around dysfunctional people, it feels dysfunctional and uncomfortable and disempowering and discouraging and deflating and all of that. Okay, let's see. Kristen says, what if you feel these things around a good person because you're used to someone harsh and wrong for 30 years? It seems like I'm not trusting a good person and feeling wrong with them. I guess the first thing I would look at with that is, how well do you know this person? So if there's somebody, let's say, for example, you go to church every Sunday and there's this person there that you're pretty sure is a good person. You've known them for years, but you've only seen them for 20 minutes every Sunday. And your kind of spider sense is going off around them. Like, you're not too comfortable around them. It might be that they're not an emotionally safe person, but it also might be that you don't have enough information yet. And so it's kind of your inner self saying, well, we don't know if this person's a good person or a problematic person. Time will tell, as we start spending more time with them and start seeing their behavior for what it is. It's really important to get kind of that baseline understanding of what's healthy and what's not healthy. And so I would encourage you to try to find somebody that you feel safe and secure and calm around. If that's a pet to start with, you've got a dog or a cat that you enjoy their company, you feel safe and secure, that's a good starting place. But ideally, find a human that you can feel that way around, where, you just, maybe it's a good friend, your best friend, or a sibling, if you're close to any of your siblings. My constant is my brother. I've, known him my whole life, and he is a really solid guy. He's backed that up with having really solid behavior. We have a great relationship. I trust him completely. I know that I can tell him, I can leave $20 on the table. It'll still be there. I can tell him any hopes and dreams I have. I know that he'll take them seriously and not make fun of me or put me down. These kinds of things. So if a person has shown with appropriate behavior over a long enough period of time that they're safe, I think you'll know. More often than not, what happens is we come across a person that we think is a good person. They are attractive, they're funny, they're uh, saying all the right things. And everybody's like, oh, this person's such a great person. And we feel like, oh man, I really don't want to ruin this. I think I have all these issues because I don't trust them, all of this. And the reality is that trust hasn't been earned yet. And it's normal. It's healthy. It's healthy to not trust a person immediately. This is what I'm saying. We have to totally change the way that we interact and perceive the world. The old us is like, I would say the vast majority of people walking around out there. Everybody thinks they've got good boundaries. And most people would be wrong, okay? Most people, quote unquote, normal people, tend to go through life. They take other people at face value, and they're pretty quick to trust a person. And they have a mindset of, I'm going to trust this person completely until they give me reason otherwise. And that is not good thinking, especially in this day and age, right? So there always needs to be kind of this healthy level of skepticism with other people. So we might be kind of polite back, but we're setting the pace. This is the difference. So we don't know if this person can be trusted or not. We're just neutral. And if you're spending time, you're talking to this person, you're picking up on some things that they say, you're spending time with them, these kinds of things, you'll start seeing through their behavior if they're emotionally safe. And as their behavior continues to show you what kind of person they are, then you'll have the information that you need. It's just one of the biggest challenges is not glossing over the small stuff right away. It's seeing it for what it is and not getting derailed by other people who also want to gloss over it and treat it like, oh, it's just no big deal. Because it is a big deal. These are the early warning signs. Siddharth, thank you for the live stream donation, says, does everybody who gets traumatized by a narcissist a codependent? How vulnerable are healthy people to cluster Bs? Thank you for your efforts. Great question. Okay. No, not every person that gets tangled up with a narcissist or a sociopath or a manipulative person is a codependent. Manipulators target people based on what they want, whether it's money, whether it's sex, whether it's social status, public image, you name it. There's a wide variety of reasons why somebody might be targeted. And because again, normal, decent people, we don't have this on our radar. So if we tend to take people, the old us, I'll say, okay, normal people tend to take other people at face value, and especially if they're being kind of finessed, like a lot of manipulators do. And manipulators are so skilled at this, they know exactly, they can read a person within a matter of minutes, and they know where that person's buttons are, what they need to say in order to get, the people, let's say, for example, the people that got tangled up with Bernie Madoff, right? A lot of them, very educated, very intelligent people, they lost their life savings to him. Were they stupid? Were they codependent? No. He was selling them this fantasy. Oh, you're going to get these amazing returns. You can trust me. He had, for as far as they knew, he had a proven track record. But if you go back and you listen to them tell their stories, it was these things that quit, the little things that they were glossing over that quit adding up. The returns were late. They would have to call him. He wasn't answering his phone. Things stopped adding up. But they were so emotionally invested in the situation being something other than it was. They were emotionally invested in the situation working out that they were in denial. And so they were trying to justify and minimize his behavior. Oh, the guy's really busy. Oh, I'm sure he's good for it. Oh, it's the holidays. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And hundreds of people were glossing over this stuff. And the whole time, this inner conflict was growing. So this is another signal to pay attention to. So that was this feeling of it. I mean, internally, it feels like a continual fluttering of, you just know something's wrong. Of, oh man, you're ruminating your thoughts. You're having these rehashing of thoughts. You're waking up in the middle of the night. You almost feel sick to your stomach. You start asking anybody that'll listen for what do they think about the situation. It becomes a problem. So anybody can get tangled up with the manipulator is, I guess, what I'm saying. What they do is they target people for supply, some sort of, end goal, what they're going for, and then they exploit a person's vulnerabilities in order to get that. And because we're all human, we all have vulnerabilities, and vulnerabilities aren't inherently a bad thing. It's part of being human, and around the right people, it's how relationships oftentimes tend to become stronger, because our vulnerabilities are what make us imperfect. It's what makes us human, and we can better relate to other people kind of through those vulnerabilities, through the pain in our life. And so around the right people, vulnerabilities are not a bad thing. Around the wrong people, it can get really bad really fast. And more often than not, we're not aware of our vulnerabilities, especially if we have some unaddressed vulnerabilities from childhood. So, for example, let's say, a person has walked around feeling they grew up with one parent who was abusive, the other parent who was an alcoholic, or one parent who was depressed and one parent who was just never home. Okay, either way, they might have grown up feeling very unloved and unimportant. And because of that, they are going to be starved out for that emotional nourishment that they just weren't getting at home. And that can really prime a person to be attracted to all of the intensity that tends to go along with abusive people. And when we're so starved out like this, that intensity can come across as we've met our soulmate. But what's really going on is they're mirroring back to us all of the qualities about ourselves. They're mirroring back to you all of your hopes and your dreams, and they're selling you this fantasy, but then they're going to end up delivering a nightmare. And so it's important that we're aware of what our vulnerabilities are. If a person's been feeling really lonely, maybe their spouse recently died, or they're new to town, or they've been divorced for a while, or they're recently out of an abusive relationship, and they're really overwhelmed with this next chapter in their life. They're lonely or they're scared. That can make a person really, really ripe for exploitation. And again, this stuff is not taught. So people get tangled up in this stuff all the time. And same with cults. People get tangled up in cults. A lot of them are educated, intelligent people. But cults also appeal to a person's vulnerabilities. And it's hard to see a problem when it's dressed as the solution, is really what it boils down to for any of us. But the more self-awareness you have about what the vulnerabilities, because as you go through life, you're going to have different vulnerabilities. Your vulnerabilities when you're 25 are going to be very different than your vulnerabilities when you're 75. So learning to figure out, okay, what are my vulnerabilities? And they tend to kind of stem from, if you're familiar at all with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's kind of the base of that pyramid. So your basic physical needs, food, clothing, shelter, money, employment, then your emotional needs, kind of the sense of like love, belonging, community, a sense of connection, self-esteem needs, feeling like you have a purpose, feeling that you have some sort of goal. So it's kind of appealing to a lot of these more basic needs. And, again, as we go through life, So, you go through a foreclosure, boom, now you're back to square one again on that pyramid. And it's, until you can line up housing, until you can get your finances figured out, until all of the stress resolves, we're very vulnerable. And when a person's vulnerable, they're not thinking clearly. And the catch is they might not realize that they're not thinking clearly. This is why when you hear from, different people, they say after you've gone through a death of somebody significant, to not make any, or divorce, a death or a divorce, don't make any major life decisions for at least the next year. And I think that's really solid advice, because what happens is people are vulnerable. They don't realize they're vulnerable. They start acting impulsively. They don't realize that they're acting impulsively. They all of a sudden just get this wild hair that they're going to up and move to Thailand, or they're going to go buy a business, or they're going to, they fall in love with a total stranger online. And then more often than not, what seems like this best idea they've ever had in their whole life blows up in their face. And then they're even, the shame, the embarrassment, the vulnerabilities are just heaped on, and it's a really awful place to be at. And I've been there, so I speak from experience. Let's see. Alcuda Babe says, I was once told I am not with you for your money. It threw me. Why would he say that? But he was actually telling me what I was to him, how he viewed me as supply. Yes. So you bring up an interesting point. Is a lot the human brain is so interesting. More often than not, problematic people will say, they'll let you know what they're thinking about, and they'll let things slip. So with manipulators or abusers, when they say odd things like that, it's generally because they mean the opposite, but they're trying to either reassure you or reassure themselves that they have good intentions. So it's like it's a form of projection, that they're just putting their uncomfortable thoughts and feelings onto you. But it's weird because you're like, I didn't even, like, that's out of the left field. I wasn't even thinking that you were with me for my money. So weird that you would try to reassure me about that. If you have watched any of the Chris Watts interrogation videos, if you listen to his language, when people lie, when they're trying to hide the truth, they'll start either getting like over explaining themselves. So for example, a normal person, when a person's being truthful, they expect to be believed, because it's just a given. If I tell you that I did laundry today, that is true. I would expect that you would believe me, right? But if let's say I was lying about that and I really was out robbing a bank, and that's my alibi. Well, no, I was doing laundry all day, and I spent $10 doing laundry today over at the laundromat, and I'm just going to start giving all kinds of details, trying to prove to you that I did in fact do laundry. But that in itself is a red flag, because it generally tends to be people that are lying that start over explaining and giving obscure details like that, because they know that they're not being truthful. So they're trying to convince other people of their alibi as well as themselves. So there's all kinds, again, like the whole Shannon Watts thing, Chris Watts trial and everything. He had a lot of really bizarre behavior probably his whole life, but the week before her murder and all during that interrogation, sending her a picture of a Barbie doll with a Kleenex, it looks like she's dead, with a Kleenex over it. That's not normal. And it didn't register to her as normal either. And it didn't register it to anybody else that was normal either. But that was foreshadowing, right? So again, normal, decent, nobody's going to think like, oh my goodness, I bet that means my husband's going to kill me. Like that's not even on the radar of most people. And it can feel very like we're overreacting if we take some sort of preventative action against something like that. But I'm a big fan of, if you feel like something's really off, if you get a dark vibe, if somebody sends you something like that, they start talking about murder, they start talking about you disappearing, they're sending you texts that are unsettling, that you feel like this is just really dark, get out of there. Just get out of there, because that's not normal behavior. They're warning you about what they're going to do. So some other, I should make a video, like a compilation video of different clips of wording that he used. When a person tells you, I mean, I don't know, I guess it depends on context, but more often than not, if somebody says, I promise you I would never hurt you, or I promise you I'm telling you the truth, generally it means they will hurt you and they're lying to you. Because again, normal people that are telling the truth or that aren't planning on hurting you, they wouldn't say these things, A, and B, they're not going to feel the need to convince you that they're being truthful. And he used a lot of that kind of language when he was talking to the investigators, of really trying to convince them that he was not a murderer. So I don't know, just if you're finding in your life that somebody's telling you that they're not going to cheat on you, that they're not going to hurt you, again, this stuff, they're not going to steal from you, this stuff should be a given. Like, I would hope that you wouldn't, right? That's weird that anybody would even try to reassure you of that. That's a huge red flag if somebody starts telling you, I would never hurt you, I would never cheat on you, I would never lie to you, I would never steal from you. Normal people don't do that. Christy says, what about if they want to be engaged immediately? Well, that's a huge red flag. And let's talk about why that is. There's a couple reasons that's problematic, okay? So for one, if a person wants to get engaged immediately, and we're talking, I would say to me, immediately would be anything, knowing a person less than 6 months, okay? To me is immediately. But if we're talking within the first couple dates or the first month, that's for sure, hands down, a red flag. Moving that fast is really, it's a huge sign of immaturity. This is not what mature adults do, because mature adults understand that everything is easy to get into and it's a heck of a lot harder to get out of it. And marriage isn't a decision that should be made on a whim. It should be given a lot of thought and discussion, and there needs to be conversations about everything. Everything. How would you raise kids? If you have kids, how is it going to work with co-parenting? What is your credit score like? What is your relationship with money like? How much do you normally save? How much do you pay your bills on time? You need to know, you need to have all of these uncomfortable conversations with the person when talk of marriage is coming up. It's the whole idea that it's just romantic and it's a whirlwind and I love him and he loves me and we're going to go to Vegas. It's immature. It's silly. It's immature. And that's why the vast majority of those relationships fail, because it's not based, there's no solid foundation there. So that's a problem, because this idealized stage, we all fall into this idealized stage. We all think when we're in love, or we're having these feelings of infatuation, the first 90 days or so, that the object of our infatuation seems perfect. We feel like we've met this amazing person and we're not seeing them clearly, right? So it takes a little while for that infatuation to wear off, and then we start seeing them more clearly, kind of warts and all, right? We start seeing, oh my goodness, this person, I don't know, pays their bills late, or this person snores, or this person, I don't know, drives like a grandma, or this person, you just start seeing it's the reality of who they are. And then it's time to start figuring out, okay, what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But you've got to get to actually know a person and see, how do they handle stress? How do they handle frustration? What is their relationship with their family like? If it's problematic, how is that going to impact you? If his mother is a total nightmare, but he feels like he can't set boundaries or be assertive with her, and she wants to come stay with you guys every month or every 1 month out of the year, then what? Like, how are you going to navigate that? Like, these are the things, you know? So the day-to-day stuff needs to be figured out. So that's a problem. When a person wants to be impulsive about a major decision, whatever it is, buying a business, getting married, having a baby, even getting divorced, if it's impulsive and there's no kind of foundational reasons for it, that's a problem. But this also goes back to you setting the pace. It really, truly, this is going to sound maybe selfish. It doesn't matter what somebody else necessarily wants. It's whether or not that works for you. So you might have a person that totally want to marry you. They've been on 4 dates now and they are head over heels and they want to propose to you. Okay, you might be flattered, right? I don't know. You might be totally I would be totally turned off by that. Although the old me would have been flattered by that. Let me just tease this out a little bit, because I think it's important for new people here to see the fuller picture of this. The reason the old me would have been flattered by somebody talking about marriage or proposing marriage on like the 3rd or 4th date is because the old me really confused that level of intensity with sincerity. This was a game changer for me, and I think for a lot of people out there, is seeing this kind of behavior clearly. It's immature. It's not sincere. They don't know you. They really don't know you. They think they know you, but they don't know you. It's not sincere, and it's impulsive, and it's immature. And when you see it for what it is, it's like, wow, okay, it's either it's generally a turn off when you see it for what it is. It's like, man, I do not want a person who's impulsive or immature in my life. Like, I need to have a functional adult who knows how to make thought through decisions. So that was a big shift of seeing that intensity for what it is and not getting roped into it. But back to setting the pace. So if another person, they're 3rd date, they're all in, right? And you're like, ooh, yikes, I don't know. But they seem like they seem like everything you'd ever want in another person. And there's a part of you that their behavior, it's registering as immature. It's registering as too much too soon. But there's a part of you that really wants to believe that somebody could love you so completely and thoroughly right away. We want to believe that maybe this person's it. They're going to just love us so much. They're just going to squeeze all of our broken pieces together. And it's us falling for the fantasy of that. And really, the vast majority of times when people fall for the fantasy of that, it's because we have this unaddressed vulnerability that we've been walking around feeling unloved or unimportant for a very long time. Healthy people do not fall into that. That registers as a complete turnoff and a huge red flag. So seeing the fantasy for what it is, and then realizing that you are in control. This is your life. You're in the driver's seat. Your life is not a democracy. Other people don't get to vote on it. And you decide what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So if somebody's professing their undying love, it's date number 3. It's okay for you to say, hey, whoa, slow down. Like, I am not okay with this. This is way too much too soon. I'm flattered, maybe, that you think that you love me, but we hardly know each other. Or however you want to handle it. It's totally fine with you, but I definitely wouldn't move full speed ahead. This is the other thing. A lot of people, we talk about abusers creating this whirlwind, and this is how this stuff starts. Is they're very quick to combine their lives with you, especially their finances, and they just get their target on lockdown. And more often than not, we are excited about the whirlwind. We willingly jump into it, and we just, we make it go twice as fast because it feels so amazing to be the object of somebody's attention and affection. And it just feels like everything that you've been missing, because it is, but it's not real. It's not real. Let's see. Jennifer says, I used to be obsessed with that show, Millionaire Matchmaker. I remember one episode, she made a match where they ended up getting married on their first date. How is that okay? It's not. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. And I hope that was just for ratings and that wasn't actually a real thing. Because, boy, are they going to be sorry in about 6 months from now when the reality comes crashing down. Because like I was saying, a real relationship with a person, it's not sexy. It's the day-to-day stuff. It's, how do they handle stress and frustration and finances and, like, how tidy are they, or how messy are they? Or, what is their relationship with, if they have children, or if they don't, do they want children? It's just all of this kind of stuff. What kind of weird quirks do they have? And then they really should be thinking the same thing about us. It's doing the due diligence on a person to see, is this attraction wears off. That wears off, 6 months or so into a relationship. I mean, there's still like attraction there, but it's not this like lust fueled kind of a thing. It's the foundation stuff that can make a relationship go the long run. Diana says, reality TV is dumbing down the planet. Yes, I agree completely. Oh, it's awful. Especially when it's stuff like that, because it feeds into the fantasy of Prince Charming and this whirlwind, over the top fairy tale proposal. And oh my goodness, you're just going to know on the first date, and then you're going to get married and, live happily ever after. And it's just, it's just a bunch of nonsense. And if that stuff does work out, I would say it's less than 1%. Like this is your life. Like, you don't want your life. You don't want those kinds of odds, right? No other time would we go for the odds of 1% working out, especially when you got half your stuff on the line. It's just ridiculous. Hey, Lydia says, my ex is spending his new supplies money as fast as he can. I'm so glad I'm out. Yay. Yeah, I'm glad you are too. Okay, let me scroll up here. Wonder Woman says, I think I'd fall for it because I never meet people and I'm so freaking lonely. I work in a basement and I don't go out to bars or go on dating sites. How do you even meet men? Well, I would say if you're lonely, I would encourage you to start with making friends. Shoring up those kind of base level steps, kind of making sure that you're the kind of basic vulnerabilities, that those aren't driving your behavior. Loneliness is a huge one that can make people do like all kinds of terrible judgment comes from loneliness. It also comes from any type of scarcity. So if we don't have any money, or we don't have shelter, we don't have a house, like if we don't have friends, these kinds of things, it skews our compass for what is nourishing for us and what is toxic for us, like you would not believe. So I would really encourage you kind of getting those basic steps, basic needs met. So making friends. I'm a huge fan of meetup.com. I think it's a really great way to get out there and meet people. There's it's not a dating site. There's groups generally all over the world, I think now, most of them are very low cost, and I would encourage you to join at least a dozen different groups. That might sound excessive, but hear me out. So you don't have to go to every single event. So when you join, you get to pick and choose, but at least you have options. So if you're feeling especially lonely or you're just bored and you want to go out, you can go see like what's going on with these different meetup groups that I've joined and go. And I would encourage you to join any group that even sounds remotely interesting to you, because you just never know when you're going to meet people that you really click with. Some of my best friends here in Michigan, I met through meetup.com, and they're amazing people. And it's fun. It can be fun. I should say, it's the general public. So there's no shortcut around having healthy boundaries, because sometimes there are some, weirdos or not your people that gravitate towards you. But this is what I'm saying. It's a good place. It's a very safe way to go about starting to pay attention to body language and kind of observing other people and practicing boundaries and being assertive and all of this. So I would start there. I'd really get these foundational skills down before you even start to date. Seriously, because if you can't tell an emotionally safe person from an emotionally dangerous person, don't date. It's just most likely not going to end well. So, if you're lonely and you're dating because you want a friend, then that's also a problem. Like, get your support system in place, get a social circle going, and then consider dating. That's my 2 cents about that. Catherine says, why do we all have this desire for the fantasy? Do you think it's films, books we watched as kids and teens? Why isn't grounded and usual okay? Why do we want the fantasy and the unusual? I do think a lot of it has to do with media. These are the fairy tales, and boys and girls are fed different versions of this, and either version gets men and women, boys and girls, into trouble. So men tend to be kind of taught the whole white knight version of, you act like Prince Charming and you rescue the damsel in distress. Well, the problem with that is then you get a woman that has a lot of unresolved baggage because she can't hold her own. So you really don't want a project, you want a partner. So that's not the damsel in distress. You want somebody that's able to, problem solve their own life and not relying on you to save them from their own life, right? So that's kind of the message men are sold. Women are oftentimes sold, it's the fantasy, it's of, I guess the person coming to rescue us, or the beautiful, it's the happily ever after. It's a fantasy of all that. And, but yeah, it's a problem that real relationships and kind of healthy boundaries and standards and deal breakers aren't more prevalent. But honestly, it wouldn't really make for that interesting of TV. We all tend to watch YouTube channels and TV that are total train wrecks because it's entertaining. But the problem is when we're confusing entertainment for how things should be, that's a problem. I see this, this is a trend I've noticed more and more that I find really disturbing. I see this more on YouTube. There's quite a few YouTubers out there who I would say are either on drugs, or they're profoundly traumatized and they're acting out in all kinds of ways. They're either hypersexual, they've, just done all kinds of like extreme things to their appearance to try, because they're not comfortable with themselves. And you hear kind of their backstory, and it's like, okay, this person's not comfortable with themselves. They're overcompensating for that. And this is how it's coming out. And so you've kind of got like trauma, potentially plus drugs, equals this extreme behavior. And what's concerning to me is that other people see it as, oh, it's so great, they're expressing their individuality. Or, yeah, I guess that's what it is. They're being themselves. And that's concerning because it's like, this is actually not who they are. This is an overcompensation. What you're seeing is a series of defense mechanisms in play. This isn't who they are. And I'll tell, and the reason why I can say that is because if at the end of the day, and you take off the, if you wash your face, you take off the makeup, you take off the clothes, you take off the fake hair and the fake nails, you take all the stuff off, and it's just you. If a person feels less than just being real, being themselves, that's a problem. And all of that other stuff is compensating for something. So it'd be different if they felt completely fine with no makeup, no brand name stuff, no, none of this stuff. But the real extreme behavior, the extreme appearances, that stuff is, in my opinion, it's more of it's compensation than anything else. But it's scary it's scary and concerning, because I look at that and I think I think there's a lot of kind of unprocessed trauma that's flying under the radar because of that. And that's what concerns me. Okay, so let me scroll up. Okay. Kiara says, Dana, I spend all my time trying to heal and absorb resources, but recently I chased after an abusive person who treated me badly, and I let them mistreat me. I thought I knew better, but I'm back at square one. Okay, so let's look at that situation from a place of curiosity, not from a place of judgment, and try to examine what was the hook that had you. What was the appeal of this person? Were they incredibly intense? Were they very quick to kind of make you their whole world? Or was it simply that you were just really attracted to them and maybe they didn't do all of those things? Sometimes that happens. Was it the pull of the fantasy of that this is this perfect person and that things could be amazing with them? Really getting clear with yourself as far as kind of the thought process and what was going on there. The added challenge to this is every single abusive person comes across in a different way because they're all individuals. So we can think that we've got this figured out. And I think most people go through this. I know for sure I did, where it's, I had shared my story. I dated a guy when I was in high school who was completely psycho and dangerous and scary and awful. And I swore to myself I would never, ever date anybody like him. And I never did again. But I dated, there were, obviously two other really problematic people that I fast forward dated 20 years later. They were the polar opposite of the first guy. And because they came across in a very different way, I didn't connect that there was any similarity between them. So the point being, it can be we can think that, oh, okay, I'm not, let's say a person's got a parent who's incredibly abusive, they're verbally abusive, maybe they drink and, they're just really loud. I'm like, okay, I'm never doing that again. And then they're horrified to then realize, oh my goodness, I've married an abuser, but they go about it in a different way. Maybe they don't drink, maybe they don't yell, but maybe they do the opposite. They freeze them out. They're silent, they're withdrawn. They don't yell, they don't talk, basically. And so then they realize, oh my goodness, I'm just in a different type of abusive relationship. And then they get out of that, and then they realize they become fast friends with this amazing new person they have so much in common with, very quick to be, that's my new BFF, right? And then they find out, oh my goodness, she's really controlling, she's manipulative, I loaned her a bunch of money, she never repaid me, this kind of stuff. And then again, we're like, how did this happen? How are all these snakes getting into my life? And it's when they play a different role, when they're a different gender, when they have different professions, when there's radical differences about them, it's hard for us to link up a pattern there. I've talked about this quite a bit. There's people, and I get this, our brains are going to start linking up what it thinks to be cause and effect to the best of our ability. If we don't understand, if we're not spotting manipulative or problematic behavior for what it is, our brain has got to make some sort of sense out of what happened in order to try to keep us safe. And so what it does is it starts linking up incorrect cause and effect. It'll start looking for things that are repeating. So maybe you dated 2 men that were problematic. They were both Scorpios. So now you might be like, oh, that's it. I'm done with Scorpios, right? Or you've dated 4 men in a row. And the only commonality is that you've dated them and they're men. So then people are like, okay, that's it. I'm done dating. Or you've dated somebody, maybe 2 different people at work, and they're both attorneys. You're like, okay, that's it. I'm no more attorneys, or no more redheads, or no more, you know what I mean? Like or no more, Catholic men, or no more younger women or older men, or whatever it might be. It's so easy to link up incorrect cause and effect and not even realize that we're doing it. So that's another thing to kind of watch out for. And the thing is, when you start understanding, when you start seeing this problematic behavior for what it is, you're so much more equipped to navigate your environment, because you're not caught up in kind of scanning people based on like their astrological sign, their profession, their hair color, their age, the type of car they drive, anything else. You're seeing problematic behavior for what it is. And it exists across the board. It's any gender, any nationality, any sexual orientation, any age, any profession, any socioeconomic status, you name it. So let me scroll up here and see if Kiara has elaborated. Metamorphosis says, Dana, that is terrifying. I worry about dating someone worse. So, like I was saying before, I think it's really important. You're learning a brand new set of skills. And it's like any other skill, like playing the piano. Actually, what it's more like is, those, old-timey movies where they had like a drum strapped on their back, and they were playing the cymbals, and they had, like a one-man band. They had all these different instruments that they were playing all at once. Like they had an accordion and cymbals and a drum and this, and they were walking along being in a band. It's like that. You're learning to play like 5 different musical instruments all at once. And it takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice to get all of these skills in sync with each other to where it's not just chaos. And so practicing these skills in a safe way, again, meetup.com, big fan of that. Or if you don't have that in your area, volunteering at different places, or joining some potentially groups around town, or Facebook oftentimes has groups for local areas that you can join. Getting out there, practicing these skills in a really emotionally neutral way. It's really difficult to practice these skills and jumping into the deep end with dating. The reason being is especially if we haven't addressed our vulnerabilities. If you're walking around, you have an attitude of scarcity, for whatever reason, you are feeling lonely, or you're looking for somebody to kind of quote unquote complete you, that's chumming the waters of abusive people. And the challenge, the hard thing is we're going to have a really hard time walking away from somebody who seems like a great catch, because we're so starved out. So it's really difficult for us to make good decisions when we're that starved out. is really what it boils down to. So I can understand that you're worried about dating someone worse, but here's the deal. So if you get those foundational pieces in place, if you start dating somebody and they do turn out to be worse, because here's the thing, let me back up. You're going to be going about things very differently. Okay. Ideally, we're no longer trying to be the person that we were, because life is always about growth, and growth is always about moving forward. It's never about going backward. Okay. So we're not trying to be the old version of us, and we're not trying to be normal. Normal is just different degrees of dysfunction. So what we're aiming for now is healthy. So healthy people do things very differently than the way a lot of us previously did things. Healthy people, they set the pace. So, and they know what they have to bring to the table. They know when they're being mistreated. They know when something is nourishing for them and emotionally safe, and they know when something's toxic and not safe. And they can respond. Here's the key. They can respond accordingly. So the old you may have gotten tangled up in an abusive relationship and gotten dragged through hell because for maybe a wide variety of reasons, we thought they would change. We thought we felt obligated to stay. We just didn't realize that we were being manipulated or abused. We continued to excuse their behavior. We had pressure from friends or family or church or religious group to stay. There might have been all of these different factors at play. But now that you know different, you have a much more, much bigger understanding of all of this, of what abuse is, what manipulation is, how, what assertive communication is, what, boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and realizing that all you need is your truth with a lowercase t, like your perception of reality. And if something's not working for you, then that's all the proof that you need. Like, you don't need concrete proof from them to really prove to you that they're dangerous and destructive, or that they really are cheating or stealing from you or whatever. Like, if it doesn't work for you early on, it doesn't work for you. And you can respond in whatever way you feel appropriate. So now that you know different, you're not going to get dragged through hell, because you're going to realize, I've been down this road before. I don't need to go all the way to the end to realize I'm off track. I can stop right now, and I can turn around and go back the other way. It's important if we realize, you know what, I made a mistake. I did this. I thought I saw this person clearly. I thought they were one way, and they're not. And I'm really bummed out. I really liked them. There's a lot of great qualities about them, but man, now I'm getting yelled at, or I'm getting silent treatment, or I'm getting raged at, or whatever it might be. You've been down this road before. You know that's not for you. So that's when you detach. And this is why you also move slowly, because you just realize pretty much everybody's on their best behavior for at least the first 30 days, at least, generally 90. So I forget who said it in the chat. Somebody said a while back, like, you're not meeting the real person during the first 90 days. You're just meeting their representative. And I think that's so true. It's like a job interview. When a person shows up for a job interview, you're not meeting the real them. You're meeting you're meeting their representative. You're meeting the person that they want you to meet. Right? We're all like this. When you go on job interviews, you put your best foot forward. You're trying to get the job, and then you settle in. People become more casual, and you start to see kind of the real them. Oh my gosh, they're chronically late, or oh my gosh, they, whatever it might be, they don't handle stress well, or they are really inappropriate. They tell inappropriate jokes in the office, or whatever. It just takes a while to see a person for what they are. So it's the same in dating. Just going slow. That's the biggest thing, going slow. And not giving a person trust right away. Just realizing trust is earned. It's earned with appropriate behavior over, a period of time. It's healthy to not trust a complete stranger right off the bat. It doesn't mean you're hypervigilant. It doesn't mean anything other than you actually have a healthy degree of skepticism and you're doing a good job at being self-protective. Does that make you feel better? Let's see here, my scroll. It's a lot of, these early problematic signs. It's truly, it's seeing them for what they really are. That is truly the hardest thing. There's so many red flags. It's so easy to mistake that intensity for sincerity and that controlling or that persistent behavior for caring. And it's not. It's, really, it's abusive. It's problematic behavior. If a person's really persistent, they don't respect your boundaries, they're almost obsessive with how much they want to talk to you. You're trying to set boundaries. They don't care. They steamroll right over them. Maybe they have a bunch of squirrely behavior. They're liking, they've got all kinds of friends of the opposite sex, or I guess of the same sex, depending on your sexual preference. And they're just, they're liking a bunch of sexy pictures on Facebook or on Instagram. They're hiding their phone. They're chatting with people that, they're telling you, oh, it's just a friend. This kind of squirrely, insincere, it's just insincere behavior, squirrely behavior. If you feel like communication goes off the rails and you're trying to improve your communication by having conversations with them and addressing the issue, they keep shifting off topic, they keep blaming you, they totally shut down, they refuse to talk about it, they start raging. These are all signs. Like, this is not a person with this sense of mutuality. Metamorphosis says, okay, yes, it does make me feel better. It's just scary, but I'm hopeful that I will see reality in front of me. I think the biggest thing is really getting used to what something feels like when it's not for you. You have that within you. That never goes, that the good news is it never goes away. It's always there. I promise you, it really, really is. It's kind of a built-in thing for us humans, and animals have their own instincts. Human beings, we have our own as well. And it's there. It's just, you got to uncover it. It's just been buried. So really getting in tune with how something feels when it feels off, how something feels when it feels healthy, and paying attention to that, and just practicing. Okay, let me see. Scroll up here. Yeah, Jen says, if something is telling you to stop, then stop. And if it feels bad, don't do it. Jessica says, when do you know if you can trust someone? When their behavior over a consistent period of time has proven that you can. It's, what you see with a lot of abusive or manipulative people is they will insist that you trust them, or they'll tell you, you can trust me. This is crazy making, especially if they've had a bunch of, especially if you've caught them texting another woman or cheating on you or whatever the situation is, stealing from you, lying to you, and then they get offended when you don't trust them. So it's healthy to have trust issues with the person who has lying or cheating issues. Like, that's appropriate behavior. So trust is built with appropriate behavior over a consistent period of time. If there's been some sort of like egregious break in trust, they've cheated on you, they've, stolen from you, they've lied to you about something major, that takes a very long time to rebuild trust. And a person who's broken that kind of trust, they should understand that it's going to take you a while and that they're going to need to earn it. And generally that's going to mean living a life of total transparency, because it's hard to rebuild trust when they were doing such a good job of hiding things before. So it's, if we're talking about that kind of stuff, I would really get clear on yourself as far as your deal breakers go, because as far as cheating and, siphoning household funds, that kind of stuff, generally what is just the tip of the iceberg. It's what you caught them doing, but they've probably been up to it for a while. If it's a stranger or somebody else, it just depends on how much time you're spending around them. And, it's paying attention to when you do share something with them, how do they handle that? Are they showing that they're emotionally safe, that they're trustworthy with the things that you have entrusted them with? Are they, little things like, do they show up when they say they're going to show up? Do they, because sometimes even like, non-manipulators or non-abusers can be flaky. But that's still a problem. So it doesn't, you sometimes, like if a person's still flaking out for whatever reason, if they're still showing you for whatever reason, they're not trustworthy at this point, that's all the information that you need to know. So then it's sort of like, okay, like I have to do something different. I have to kind of take a few steps back because, this person's not reliable. Okay, somebody put it in all caps, and let me see. Okay, Siddharth says, hey, Dana, can you please answer my question? Let me scroll up, and I didn't even... Are you talking about your original question about the cluster B thing? Because I felt like I did answer that, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't answer it very, very well. There's another question in here. Is BDSM a red flag? More often than not, yes, it is a huge red flag. And the reason being is because the people that are drawn to be dominant tend to be very controlling, and they like to be in charge. And I think it's a very rare person that can kind of turn that on and turn that off. So they can go from a place of power over to a place of mutuality. More often than not with BDSM, you've got a lot of, this is a generalization. This has just been my experience. And like you've got a lot of people that are sex addicts. You have a lot of people that are not looking for authentic connection. It's just completely sex. Here's the bottom line. A relationship has to be really healthy in order to act that unhealthy. So you've got to really have a healthy, solid relationship in place with really solid communication, respect for boundaries, assertiveness, all of this stuff in place before you add on potentially getting tied up or when you start playing around with like power dynamics, you need to have a really healthy power dynamic already in place. And I don't see a whole lot of people that are in kind of the BDSM community that have that. What happens more often than not, especially with the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing, which is just like awful. It's just, it's caused so much harm. I can't even begin to fathom how much harm that those books and movies have caused, because there's definitely no healthy context. And talk about selling a really sick fantasy. It's the fantasy that a woman's love can fix a broken man. And that's codependent thinking. Like, that's not normal, healthy thinking at all. And not to mention, he was stalking her. He had no respect for her boundaries. He only liked her because she was so innocent and So innocent. So like there was no sincere attraction there. If somebody's attracted to you for your innocence, that's really disconcerting. Okay. Somebody just said, I got a super chat from Shadar. I totally missed that. Oh my goodness. I'm just talking up a storm. What time is it? Okay. So thank you for the super chat. I'm sorry I missed it. Let me, okay, Siddhartha says, Dana, toxic shame question. Okay, so let me scroll up. Can you, okay, hold on, I'm scrolling up. Can you repost it while I am scrolling up? And I'm going to continue looking for it here. Okay, give me just a second here. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Okay, I am not seeing it. If somebody else sees it, could you copy and paste it down below? I'm going to scroll back down to the bottom to see if anybody has. Oh, okay. Thank you. Missouri Cowboy says, Dana, Siddharth's question was, how do I deal with the toxic shame after abuse? Okay, great question. And thank you, Missouri Cowboy, for reposting that. I think in large part, when we're feeling shame for being, I guess, I'm going to answer the question in the way that I understand it. If I'm off base, set me straight, okay? A lot of people feel shame for being in these relationships, for not seeing that they were manipulated or abused at the time. They're ashamed for staying as long as they did. There's lots of different reasons that a person might feel shame after one of these relationships ends. They might, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. I think a big part of that is understanding that that shame is not yours to carry. And it's when Pia Melody said in one of her books, she said it so perfectly. It was something along the lines of, when another person acts shameless, we tend to feel shame for them. It's sort of like when a person acts in a way that's really embarrassing, we feel embarrassed for them because they don't feel the embarrassment. And it's kind of the same thing. You have an abuser who has no shame, no concept of boundaries, no limits to their behavior. They're acting in a way that they have, there's no shame, there's no conscience, there's no any of that. And so in turn, we tend to feel those feelings that they should be having. But because they're not having them, we are. So if you can untangle and realize this is not you, this is not your shame to carry. You did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. You would not, had you known that this was an abusive relationship, you would not have gotten into it, right? So abuse, it happens, it's slow, it's a slow and steady descent into hell. And it's because it's slow and steady, it just very quickly becomes a person's new normal, and they don't even realize that they're being dragged to hell. So it can happen to anyone. It really, truly can. And it's one of those things you just almost have to kind of live it to understand how stealthy that kind of abusive and manipulative behavior truly can be. But this is not your shame to carry. You had a lot of your vulnerabilities exploited, and a person that just has a very twisted and warped sense of reality that they used against you. Okay, so I hope, does that answer your question? So let me kind of elaborate a little bit more. If you're, let's say you're laying in bed and it's late at night and you're starting to feel shame about your situation and you're embarrassed and and I get it. I mean, I get it. I've been there more than once. And you're just really getting down on yourself. It can really help to remind yourself to have, like the book we just read for book club, to have compassion with yourself, for yourself, to have compassion for yourself and realize that you did the best you could at the time. And now that you know different, you're going to do different. And that this is not your shame to carry. They acted in a way that was totally outrageous and inappropriate. They should be ashamed of how they acted. Okay, let me see. Metamorphosis says, Dana, I also found myself randomly doubting my victim status again. It seems crazy to me when I'm working so hard to heal. I was comparing my experience to others. Is this typical? I'm 6 months, no contact. Great question. It's very common for people to compare in general, right, to other people. I think especially with abuse, because it tends to happen in isolation. We tend to not have validation about it. We tend to be blamed for it and to be continually told, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing, or that never happened, or you deserved it, or whatever. And so there's already all of this existing confusion about what happened, why it happened, all of this stuff. And so when a person leaves a situation, an abusive relationship, there's still all of this confusion that they really have to kind of comb through and reclaim their perception of reality. So, and of what happened. So it's very common for survivors to not only compare their abusive experiences to other people, but to also compare their healing to other people. And of course, whenever we compare ourselves to other people, that's just kind of a recipe for disaster, because there's always going to be somebody out there who's got it better than you and somebody out there that's got it worse than you. But when a person's already so fragile and they are, let's say they're in a support group and they start realizing, oh my goodness, this is so wonderful. It's not just me. Like, this has happened to other people, and very similar situations have happened to other people. They might start hearing there's some real horror stories in the support group that just make you want to start crying. I mean, they're just heartbreaking. And, a person can read about some of these stories and just think, oh my goodness, maybe I'm making too big of a deal out of my situation. Or, boy, I really feel bad calling what I went through abuse when this person, was physically tortured and all kinds of just inhumane treatment, beyond inhumane treatment. And so maybe I am making a big deal out of nothing. So there's that kind of comparison, which is not helpful. Abuse is abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Even though there's not the physical component, it's still very real and it's still incredibly damaging, and it takes a person a long time to move forward and heal from that. So all forms of abuse are equally damaging. It's not a contest about who's had it worse and maybe mine isn't that bad in comparison to theirs, kind of a thing. Like, that's just, I guess just know that. But it is very common. When I was working at the domestic violence shelter, we would have, this was actually such a big deal, because we would have women come in that, there was 9, I think I think 9, it's either 9 or 14. Now I can't even remember. Max number of people. I think it was 14, max number of people. And a lot of the women would start talking and start sharing stories. And then it was just this realization of, oh my goodness, actually, I don't deserve to be, I need to leave. I don't deserve a bed here, because there might be a woman out there who's got it so much worse than me. She might need to be here more than me. And so I don't feel comfortable taking up a bed, when I'm now aware of some people are going through absolute hell. But I can see where that thinking comes from. I totally get it. I think that speaks, when a person's struggling with that, it tends to be um, kind of coming from a place of compassion, but it also comes from a place of not making ourselves a priority and not validating our own pain. So it's important that your pain is your pain. And if it's painful, it's valid, period. So that's the part. And then the comparing healing is also a big thing. So you might have some people that are 6 months out, and they might be totally celebrating it. 6 months, no contact, woo woo, man, life is amazing. I never thought I'd be here. And look at me now. And they're posting pictures, and they've lost 50 pounds, and they've gotten into this amazing shape, and their hair's done and their nails are done, and they look so cute and just pulled together, and their house is clean. And, and then here you are, and you're like, boy, I can hardly get out of, if I shower, it's considered a good day. Right. And you're at the opposite end of where they are. And then it can feel like, what's wrong with me? I must be broken. I'm more broken than I realized, because here's this other person. They're out there, they're dating again, or they're making new friends and going bowling and doing all these fun things. And I just don't want to leave the house. I don't trust people. And, I feel profoundly broken. So all of this is a very individual thing. Healing, all of it. It's a very individual thing. And it really helps to just kind of just, say run your own race, but it's not even that. It's just basically being good to yourself and focusing on you, focusing on your healing. And, everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through that. Okay. So, okay, good. Siddharth says, yes, Dana, you answered my question. Cool. Yay. I'm so sorry I didn't see it before. I get the talking, and then next thing you know, the chat is filling up. So, okay. Let's see here. Yes, Jedi Frogmaster says, healing is lifelong. It is a never-ending struggle, but it is necessary so that you develop a sense of peace within yourself. The alternative is to continue to suffer. Yes. And I feel like there really does come a point with healing where, when enough time has passed, when your wounds aren't so fresh and raw, when you're really able to move forward with a place of, introspection and curiosity, where if you do slip up, or if you do, a problematic person slides under your radar, or a problematic comment slides under, something happens and you don't address it in the way that you'd like, that it doesn't send you into this emotional collapse, that you're able to have that distance and to examine kind of, well, what happened here, and how can I do different next time? There does kind of come this place when you're at that point that healing, there truly is a place where healing really starts to become fun, because then I know that sounds crazy, right? But it really does. It starts to become fun, because then you start really learning so much about yourself. It's this journey into personal growth that you never thought you needed, and never knew that you even wanted, and never thought possible to even have. It's phenomenal. And you start learning all kinds of things and connecting all kinds of dots and seeing patterns of behavior in yourself and in other people, and the way that you interact with other people. And you start getting in tune with, your likes and your dislikes and your thoughts and your feelings and all of that. And it just keeps going. It's just layers and layers and layers. And, you kind of start going down that rabbit hole, and you have all of this awareness about yourself and these continual aha moments where your mind is just blown. You're like, oh my goodness, that's wild. How did I not recognize that about myself? And, you just keep going, and you keep having these different aha moments, and you might even circle around again, but then you have maybe the same aha moments, but at a deeper level. And it's just the level of insight that it's continuous. It's just kind of waves of awareness wash over you as time goes on. And yeah, it's just really cool. And the more in tune you become with yourself, the more your life really starts working out for you. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Eerie Rising says, the shame that still grabs me the most is around the financial abuse. I tried to say no. My ex narcissist started having his daughter call and give the tales of woe, asking for money. It's all manipulation. And now I'm in a huge financial debt to my own detriment. Here's what I would say to that is, so often in life, we learn so much more from our mistakes than we do from when things go well. And in that way, I think these mistakes in life, even though they're expensive, even though they're painful, even though they can really be some of the best lessons out there. So I would encourage you to look at it as this money, this debt that you now have, I would consider this as it's tuition to the school of hard knocks. And honestly, sometimes that money that we lose in really painful ways is some of the best money you'll ever spend. Because boy, there's a lot of lessons in that, right? That you can squeeze out. And I will tell you, there's many people walking around with a college degree that's completely useless, and they didn't learn hardly anything. So if you've learned a ton from it, I truly mean this. It's tuition at the school of hard knocks. You just earned a master's degree in manipulation, and you are smarter and you're wiser and stronger for it. So I hope that helps. I have done the same thing. I've, gotten tangled up. I bought Jack a truck, and then because I didn't learn that lesson the first time around, thankfully he repaid, I think, most of it. But then I did the same damn thing again, and I bought Steve a truck. And I don't know if he repaid all of it, but he repaid a chunk of it. But it's still, I don't have thousands of dollars to just, give to people, but it hurt. But honestly, I think it needed to hurt. It needed to really hurt in order for me to fully learn that lesson, because I kept going around that mountain. And I had done this with other people in my life where I had just been very quick to take them at face value and to put myself at financial risk when I couldn't afford it. So yeah, I get it. Missouri Cowboy says, uh-oh, repeating patterns. I did the same things over and over and over. LOL. Yes. Yes. Well, yep. Welcome to the club. you're not alone with that. that's how we all learn. We just have to stumble and fall. And once we experience enough pain, we start doing something different. But it often takes us a few times of getting, experiencing that pain to really, truly get motivated to do something different. Okay. Jennifer says, when you get married or move in together, is it okay to keep finances separate, or is that a sign of mistrust? I always wanted to keep my finances separate with my ex. I just don't like the idea of sharing an account. Well, I would say there's going to, lots of different people have lots of different opinions about this. Here's my take on it. I really feel there's, frankly, I feel in this day and age, when you've got the divorce rate at about 50%, it's a really good idea, especially if this is not your first marriage, if this is a second marriage, to go into things with a prenup agreement and to have these uncomfortable conversations. So one thing that works for a lot of people is they have their money. This is especially the case if there's children involved, because if, God forbid, one of, let's say they get hit by a bus and they have a child, and they're going to want their assets to go to their child, right? And really, that's what should happen. So, because their responsibility is to their child. So making sure that, it's uncomfortable. It's all really, really dark, awful conversations to have, but these are the things to consider when getting married, especially if there's children involved, if you're kind of blending a family, if you're talking people have had multiple marriages. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be 50 or 100 years ago. So I'm a big fan of really getting clear about this and then carving up finances. So figuring out if you can have your money and then he has his money, and maybe you have a joint account that bills come out of. And so let's say, for example, you make more money than him. I don't know, just saying. Then maybe you guys decide, okay, we're each going to put in a percentage of money into this joint pot. So maybe you kind of figure out, okay, when all is said and done when you've got a mortgage and you've got utilities and maybe a car payment and groceries and these kinds of things, let's say that totals, I don't know, $2,000. I'm in Michigan, things here are very affordable, but let's say like $2,000, right? And then you figure, okay, he's going to need to, this is how much money we both make. So we're going to both put in about roughly 20% of our income into this joint fund, this joint account. And out of that account, that's when we're going to take vacations out of that. We're going to pay rent out of that. That way there's no surprises. There's no, especially if there's children involved, he wants to pay for his son's, football gear. And that way it's, you do your stuff. It's your money. You want to spend it. You want to pay for, summer camp, and you want to pay for, I don't know, whatever stuff, maybe stuff that you don't even agree with. Like you want to go out and get I don't know, like a dirt bike. They're like, oh, hey, I'm not going to throw in for that, but if that's what you want to do, it's your money, go for it. I think it helps to keep things separate, but to keep having those conversations about money, because it is important. So that's my 2 cents. I would prefer to have separate account and then like a joint fund for things. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Jennifer says, I agree. I think, I think my current boyfriend says he would want a prenup, and neither of us want children. But every time I've dated in the past, I always get nervous that they're going to become crazy and that I will be screwed over in the end. However, I don't want to come across as skeptical or untrusting. Yeah. My whole thing, I guess I'm just very realistic about it of, you know, 50% of marriages end in divorce. And this isn't me coming from a place of fear. It's me coming from a place of reality. The odds of it not working out are very high. And when you have everything on the line, male or female, that's a lot. So I think it takes the stress away from it just takes the stress away. Like money is like one of the number one things people fight about. It's my goodness, it's working out of the same bank account with somebody. It's like trying to run a three-legged race. Like it can be very, very difficult, and it can cause a lot of unnecessary tension and all of that. And Jennifer, another thing that you could always do is you guys, you could say, this is my concern. And maybe you decide down the road to join accounts, but maybe for the first 5 years, you don't. You guys have your joint account and you do that and you just see how this works for you. And then you go from there. So, none of this is set in stone. So, but I would agree. Anne says, if you can't trust somebody with finances, do not get married. You will be legally responsible for their credit card debt. So you bring up two really valid points. I agree. If you can't trust somebody with finances, don't get married, because that's also indicative of a larger problem. And not only like potential responsibility issues, but if you're a saver and they're a spender, you're going to lock horns. Like this is a conversation that you're going to need to have sooner than later. And you're right. When you are married, and if they are doing squirrely things with finances and they can't handle money, you are responsible for half, not even just credit card debt that they incur in general. So whether that's a car payment or, business debt, potentially, it depends on how they finance things, or, all kinds of debt, you can potentially be on the hook for half. So it's good to have that conversation. So Metamorphosis says, I gotta go. Thank you. Have a fantastic night. Thank you for joining us. Mrs. Hodges says, my ex saw who had the checkbook had the power. Yeah. And that's a lot, it's a lot. That's how it is in a lot of families. And this is what I'm saying. I totally disagree with that. I think if you're going to have a joint account, it really truly needs to be 50-50. But I think it's very difficult for people to not have some hard feelings, especially if one person's making significantly more money than the other person. And especially if the person that's not making a lot of money spends it in ways that the person who's making more money doesn't agree with. It's just, I don't know. I just think it's just easier to avoid all of that completely and just to keep it separate. I don't think it's indicative of being distrusting. I don't think it's a sign that you're planning for divorce. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's just like bypassing, a very common problem that most people have. Yeah, Jedi Frogmaster. I like saying that name. Jedi Frogmaster says, being married does not mean giving up your individuality. I agree completely. Maintain separate accounts. You are both still two individual people. Difference is you both cooperate with responsibilities. Yes, absolutely. And I think it's good we're speaking more generally now, to get these responsibilities, to have this conversation, to get it divided up, instead of just assuming that a person should know. So it can really help, because that way I tell you, just assertive communication, clear communication just solves so many issues, because there's no room for confusion. So like in our relationship, I do the laundry. Travis does all the grocery shopping. I hate grocery shopping. It's one of my least favorite things. I'd rather go to the dentist than go grocery shopping. I hate it that much. I think he loves it. He just could spend hours in there walking around. He always comes back with new stuff. So that's what works for us. I'm trying to think. We both do the dishes. Trying to think how we normally carve stuff up. We normally clean together on Fridays, but it's just whatever works for you. So you're like, okay, I'm going to be the one that's in charge of, I don't know, cleaning the litter box and doing the laundry and vacuuming. And the other person's going to handle X, Y, and Z. And then it just runs smooth because there's no, oh, I thought you were going to do this, or there's no resentment that's building up because you're keeping score thinking, well, I just cleaned the litter box 9 times in a row and they haven't even done it once. And what are they thinking? And they should know that they need to, da, 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 da. Like there's just none of that because it's just everybody has their understanding. Okay. Yes, high quality, high quality distraction says like a well-oiled machine. Yes. Kendra asks, what time and nightly do these live chats take place? We do this every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then every other Tuesday. That's so random, right? Every other Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But normally, the easier one is every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh my gosh. Tyler says, why do you hate grocery shopping? Kind of a nourishing activity minus the people. Oh, Tyler, it absolutely, it stresses me out to know I have no patience. I go to the grocery store. I think it's in large part because I'm hungry when I go half the time. So I'm already irritable. It's people walking slow. It's just the lines. I can't find stuff. Uh, I don't know. It's all of it. I just get so frustrated and irritated. I will go, but it's normally if I have to go, it's during the week, like during a weekday in the middle of the day. Kevin says, I like shopping. I know some people do. I try to get into it. I thinking, oh, it could be fun to like look at different ingredients, but I think it's just all the people that are in there. Whenever I go, it just gives me anxiety. So, oh, book club. Missouri Cowboy says, Dana, plug the book club. I love the book club. Book club is the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so for this month, for December, we are kind of switching gears. We've never done a workbook before, but this month we're going to. It's called the Self-Esteem Workbook, and it's by Glenn Schiraldi, and it's chock full of exercises. I'm very excited to dig into this. So I think how we're going to carve this up is that we're each going to handle a different section. Maybe we'll pick like 2 of our favorite sections or something. I'm not sure quite how we'll carve this up, but we're each going to talk about different sections. And then that way you can kind of get insights from a variety of people. So let's see here. Truth Seeker says, I hate dishes, cooking, and laundry. I'm a catch. LOL. It's funny. Let me scroll up here. Scrolling. Mrs. Hodges says, I like to shop at late night. Few people in the store, just spent hours tooling around Myers. Oh boy. Yeah, we have a Myers here, and it can be, there's so much to see there. That can be a good wandering experience. I don't know. It's weird. No, because I think it's just the grocery store. I'm totally fine with Home Depot. And I love going to Home Depot. I could spend all day in there just looking at stuff. And I'm not even that handy. Like, I don't know why. I just really enjoy Home Depot. But the grocery store, no way. Oh, thank you. Sable Miner for the live stream donation says this is for this is for Travis's next shopping trip. And thanks, Dana. Uh, God, you're a treasure. Always learn new ideas or on things. This weird reality called life. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. I think that'll go to the coffee fund. Yeah. Agatha says, Dana, I think we just love being handy with Home Depot. I love it too. Okay, you are right. Siddharth says, Dana, what about Amazon? I love Amazon. All of my money goes to Amazon. It's how I do all of my shopping. It's ridiculous. So cute. And then I think I'm a huge fan of it because I don't have to, there's no people. Like I can just go online and find all kinds of stuff. So yeah. Well, that's a good question. Hooray says, do you think toxic people actually deep down know that they lie and manipulate? I think it depends on the person. I think there's different levels of awareness. I mean, they're individuals, right? So everybody's got a different level of awareness of their behavior. I think the people that, I think most narcissists are not aware that they manipulate. I think it's just they're so entitled that they don't see it as a problem. Like they just feel like they should just get their way because they should. I think that they are aware that they lie because here's the thing: if people don't try to cover up something, if they see no problem with it. So if a person, there's no need, there's no need to like avoid the question or to blame other people or like go to all these great lengths that narcissists do when they lie. So they know that they lie. They're just they're like a child or a teenager who lies. A little kid, 3-year-old, whatever. You could ask them. You could tell him, don't. I just made cupcakes. Don't get into them. They're for the Aunt Sarah's birthday party. And then what happens? You go to the bathroom and you come back and they've got frosting all over their face, right? And you'll look at them and they will look you straight in the eye and you will ask them what happened to the cupcakes. And they will tell you that they have no idea. And and they caught red-handed. They've got pink frosting all over their face. And they will sit there and they will just deny it. And then they start getting upset with you because you keep kind of pushing the issue. And in their mind, they're like, well, no, I don't know. And why do you think I did something and I didn't do anything? And it's the same thing with narcissists. They're still like at that emotional age. Teenagers do the same thing when they're, older. You tell them that they're grounded, then you find out they snuck out. And then they deny it and they lie to you and they tell you that never happened. And you just didn't check. They were in the bathroom or they were just sleeping, but you didn't, you must have saw their bed wrong. It just looked like they weren't in their bed. And then they get upset when they get in trouble or when you just are insistent that, no, you lied to me and you snuck out. So they know, they don't want consequences. So they just try to rewrite reality on the fly and then convince themselves of it. But sociopaths and psychopaths, I think, completely know what they're doing. And that's just a different level, because, sociopaths are more like exploitative of other people, and they're kind of the con artists of the world. Whereas psychopaths, I would say, like, are the destroyers of, they're the kind of people that just want to scorch the earth, and they're dangerous, they're deadly, and they might even take delight in doing such harm to other people for whatever reason, But yeah. And then at that point, it just becomes a game of how much they can get away with. Okay, let's see. Okay, I just realized I turned off my timer. So we are at the winding down part of the evening. So this is the time where we do like a guided meditation. So if you're interested in this, please take some time and find a place that's comfortable. If you're lying down, just take some time and get comfortable. If you're sitting down, take some time to get comfortable. And we're going to take a few breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. This is your time for you, making yourself a priority, letting all of the worry and anxiety go, being fully present in this moment, knowing that in this moment you are safe, that it's okay to just relax and continue to breathe. With each breath, with each inhale, allowing your lungs to expand, feeling that breath go down deep into the bases of your lungs, down into your stomach. Feeling your body rise and fall with each breath. Consciously releasing any stress or anxiety that you might have. And being fully present in this moment. And continuing to breathe. Now taking some time, turning inward, listening to your heartbeat, just acknowledging the magnificence that is the human body. Just amazing how many different things go on, functions go on every moment of every day. Just beautifully orchestrated without us even having to think about it or plan for it or do anything. Your body has its own timing. Its own inner workings. Feeling your heartbeat. focusing even more, bringing into your awareness the pulsing feelings in your arms, in your wrists, in your legs, in your ankles, and in your feet. With each breath, breathing in this wonderful, restorative, healing oxygen. And as you exhale, exhaling any residual tension, anxiety, or worry. Easily and effortlessly falling into the rhythm that is your body. Breathing in and breathing out. Bringing your attention to the top of your forehead. Relaxing your forehead and your eyes, allowing any tension or stress to easily and effortlessly just melt away. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw, unclenching your jaw and allowing your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth, letting your jaw fall open, feeling your face as it relaxes completely. Moving your way down to your neck and your shoulders. With each breath in, sending any oxygen you need to, or any breath that you need to any area that you feel might be storing tension or stress. So if you have any in your neck or your shoulders, sending those breaths to those areas now. Allowing your neck and your shoulders to relax. Having your shoulders roll back. Letting your arms fall easily and effortlessly by your side. And allowing them to relax completely. Reminding yourself that you in this moment are safe and that it's okay to relax. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, and your hands. Allowing your hands to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Relaxing your fingers. Allowing your hands to uncurl. Just easily and effortlessly lay at your side. Relaxing your stomach. Unwinding any knots of stress or tension that you might be holding on to. And again, reminding yourself that it's okay to relax. And continuing to breathe. Working your way down to your hips, releasing any tension or stress that you might have in your lower abdomen or in your lower back. Allowing your muscles to easily and effortlessly relax. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, and your calves. Allowing your legs to fall easily and effortlessly into whatever position is the most comfortable. feeling the weight of your body as you sink in to either your bed or a chair. Relaxing your feet and your toes. Releasing any remaining tension and anxiety in your body. Allowing it to dissolve and dissipate easily and effortlessly from your body. Now let's visualize a waterfall off in the distance on a beautiful day, turquoise skies, perfect temperature. Visualize yourself in this state of ease that you're currently in, walking towards this waterfall, hearing the water as it runs off the side of the mountain, splashing over rocks, spraying a gentle mist onto you and off into the distance, creating little mini rainbows every time you look around. This magnificent waterfall, it's beautiful silver color, sparkling and shimmering. This water is purifying and it's healing. If you have any remaining stress or tension that you are holding on to, visualizing yourself as having that in a backpack and setting down that backpack now. Realizing that you can pick it up at any time. But for now, it's okay to let it go. And as you move forward, walking into this waterfall, allowing the water to splash and cascade over you, washing away any remaining hurts, tension, or anger that's ready to wash away. This doesn't mean that you're okay with what happened. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that for right now, it's okay to have some fun and to reconnect with your authentic self. Washing away all of that disempowering programming that we've all gotten over the years. Washing away any toxic shame or low self-esteem or any cruel things that anybody's ever said to you. Just allowing all of that to go. Reconnecting to your inner self. Coming out on the other side of that waterfall, where you see lots of people, perhaps everybody from the chat tonight, is playing and splashing in a giant pool of water. Beautiful turquoise water. Not a cloud in the sky or a care in the world. Splashing around, having fun. Easily and effortlessly being present. Reconnecting with that feeling of lightness within you. That feeling of fun, that feeling of joy, that feeling of connection with other people. And realizing that there is so much that is right with you. There really, truly is. There's so much that makes you, you. And that the world and all of us appreciate you and appreciate all of the gifts that you have that make you uniquely you. So let's take a moment. Just kind of enjoy this space. Sending out light and love to other people that are in that pool of water having fun. Or any other people that you would like to in your life. Connecting to everything that is good and right with the world and with yourself. And allowing yourself to smile. It's okay to smile. It's good to smile. Smile as big as you possibly can, knowing that in this moment you are safe and it's okay, that you can still experience joy when you have other things going on in your life, that right now it's okay to just unwind and to feel light and to smile. Feeling that inner light within yourself growing larger and larger. Really connecting with that restorative healing energy as it fills up your body. It's just your natural state of being, feeling that light come pouring out of your fingertips, coming through the top of your head, the tips of your toes. It's the light that's within you. It's the light that's within others. It's the light that's everything good and right with the world. That it's always in you. That you know when you sense it, and you know when you're in the zone or in that flow in your day-to-day life. You know what nourishes you. You know what feels good. You know what feels comfortable and what is healthy for you. You truly, truly do. So come on back to yourself now. Visualize giving yourself a really big energetic hug, acknowledging how far you've come, how much stronger and wiser you are, acknowledging the strength that it's taken for you to come to this place. You are truly a warrior, and you have come out on the other side. You are a powerhouse, and there is so much that is right with you. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Come on back. Okay. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. And again, we do this every night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you next week. Have a fantastic week, and just send in lots of love and light to you guys, for real. So lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Have a wonderful night and rest of your week. Goodbye.